Gents, thanks for joining us here on Future Net Zero. James, can you explain, why you wanted to be involved in the Standard, and particularly with all that's happened this past week with some real refocusing of targets, why you think it might help to shift the dial in terms of the SME sector particularly?
Yeah, absolutely, Summit. So fundamentally for me and for our organisation, we firmly believe there is a climate emergency. We're really passionate about the environment and business, and believe that collectively business can make the biggest difference in supporting our government's net zero ambition. As you mentioned, with the recent announcements, there is going to be a continued focus on the legislation looking down at the SME sector. And for me, the Future Net Zero Standard is a key tool to enable us and our customers to manage that journey.
In terms of your customer base, before we talk to Pete, how big a story is net zero? How much awareness is there amongst customers? Because let's be honest, we're still in the midst of the pandemic. The real thing is, getting your business to survive, and that has been the overall thinking for all of us. But have you noticed that, as we hopefully get to this kind of tipping point that we're coming out of it, there is a real awareness that things are going to be a bit different this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. So both across our customer base, which is typically SME organisations, health sector, sales training firms, beauty retail organisations, the net zero and climate conversation is certainly becoming absolutely more prevalent. And we see that also through our wider networking work that we do through non-customers. The subject of sustainability and climate change is always the topic that every group continues to talk about post networking, and our customers and web inquiries are driving a lot more traffic into us at the moment.
And Pete, for your company, you're a training company. Why are you interested in net zero?
It's started off really, Summit, that I wanted to do something. We're a micro business, and often the thought is it's up to the big businesses to make an effort. But there's so many hundreds of thousands of micro businesses out there, and if we all take our part, then we can make that small difference that kind of culminates. So it was really stimulated through lockdown and watching some of the David Attenborough programs and having the awareness about the global element of a pandemic, and therefore also the other global things that we're facing. And also from my kids. My kids are 15 and 11. They're learning about the environment at school. And so it was through lots of different moments of conversation, I guess, drove me to think about, well, for my business, that at the start of the pandemic, we were predominantly classroom-based, so a physical learning provider. Then thinking, what do I do to grow the business? But then how can I grow the business but also contribute at the same time? And that was my real kind of driver to reach out and then talk to James to help me actually facilitate being able to do that.
And in terms of kind of, as you say, micro business, we're the same. So, the vast majority of businesses in this country are SMEs or micro businesses. Did you ever think about your footprint? Did you ever think about what you were doing?
Only in passing, Summit. And traditionally over my kind of 20-25 years, I've spent an awful lot of time in a car, on a train, or on a plane. So I know, so I know that I've got a footprint, but it was only really through conversations with James to actually really understand that yes, there is an ability to be able to do this. And I think that kind of focus on the micro businesses, small businesses, self-employed, individual homeowners who can make that difference. But it takes people to actually do that. And I researched that, and I didn't necessarily find it easy until I spoke to James about how to make that happen. And that was one of the things that I think will hopefully improve over the coming months and years ahead, to make it easy. Because if it's not easy, people won't do it.
James, talk us through what you said to Pete when he said, look, yeah, I want to do this, because he's a typical example of many of the businesses out there who he nailed it there. You think it's for the big boys, but no, actually, if we all do a little bit, but it's very difficult to know where to start when you're a small business. So what conversations did you have with James, and how did the conversation around the standard also come up?
Yeah, exactly, Summit. And I think the points that Pete make are very common, as you say, across typical SMEs and micro businesses. They believe it's for the big boys. They believe it costs a lot of money, and they believe they haven't got the time to really look into this. And effectively, that's where our service, in partnership with the Future Net Zero Standard, comes in, because for us, we're a business that's built on relationships, and in knowing Pete and having used his services of old, we spoke about, longer term goals, short term goals and medium term goals, and quickly established that the Future Net Zero Standards, associated and accompanied to Sustainable Business Services Ongoing Management Service, can provide Chile and Pete that low cost service that helps them understand what their carbon footprint is, and that is an ongoing managed service that then can provide them advice, support, ongoing, to help them reduce that carbon footprint. And I think Pete was quite surprised about, I guess, the hands-on approach that we deliver, and the really ease of use and display of the Future Net Zero standards to enable him to do that at a reasonable cost.
And that was the aim of the standard, that it's something that you can do. We've priced it so if you do the whole package, it's about £2 a day, less than £1 of price of coffee. How did you find using the software? And was it surprising when, hopefully it didn't take you too long to start to get that benchmark of the first month, and then you move on and it's a bit easier. But how have you found that process? Because that's the one thing we want to make sure that for businesses, it doesn't take up all your time. It lets you do your actual job, which is building your business.
Exactly that. We found the initial conversations with Chile were the ones where we're trying to understand their business and their long-term goals. They've got some really good plans to offset, gold standard offset, and to support some environmental causes as well. And we looked at what they were doing and are doing, and the dashboard, the Future Net Zero Standard, really enables us as a managing partner of Chile to do that in a really efficient way, but that enables us to provide them the data when they need it, so they can provide that to stakeholders, suppliers, etc., to show what they're doing. And the dashboard and standard make that a really simple and an effective management tool for us.
Pete, have you used the actual dashboard yourself, or have you left it to Chile and just handed over your data? Because there are two ways it can work, and that's really what we've designed it for, whether you work with a company like James's or whether you do it yourself.
Yeah, I love the fact that I don't have to do it myself, because as a micro business, you set up because you're good at a discipline. I would happen to be good with people, but I'm not an accountant, I'm not a marketeer, I'm not a sustainability specialist. So the fact that it can give me that measurement, and because I've got a commercial background, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, is kind of a mentality. So I can access that data really quickly and easily. I can see where we're heading and what their flow is, and where some improvements can be. And if I can't see it, I know that James will definitely tell me in advance of me seeing it. And that's kind of where that relationship piece with the data works brilliantly to allow where the potential of where we could go to just expand so much more. I never imagined that my mindset would be where it is now. I didn't imagine that 3 months ago. I just wanted to do something to contribute, and getting an accreditation, getting a certification, getting a measurement to it enables me to think very differently about what's ahead.
One thing we've designed this to be is to help you as a business, Pete, get more business, because as the world changes, your bigger supply companies will be asking you for what you're doing around environmental sustainability and net zero. Do you think the standard will help you in terms of hopefully winning business, because you can actually prove what your footprint is, and now all the steps you'll take to try and reduce it?
Yeah, and I think in all honesty, there's a part of me that feels slightly uncomfortable about the promotion of the business in that way, because I'm not doing it for that purpose. Having said that, I'm a business, and if we fail, then I'm not going to be able to make any positive contribution. So where it really works, where any business relationship works, is where there's an alignment of values. And when we work, and our work is with SMEs and blue chips, and depending on what they put out there into the market, and their culture will depend on how important this is to them. So it certainly enables us to have a different conversation than most of our competitors, which is great, but also have a different contact within our competitors, because we've now started to reach out to sustainability leaders to say, hey, we're a training provider that does a lot of work physically and virtually, but we can measure the carbon footprint of our activity. Is that of interest to you? So it's really early days in terms of those conversations, but it's a different conversation, a different value add. So it can only be a good thing for us.
And the final point to you, Pete, is also that, the way we see the market is that all of us as businesses, it's the same as you have to have insurance. One day, to have a contract, someone's going to say to you, what's your carbon? And it may become legislation fairly soon, within the next 5 years. So hopefully the standard might give you a head start in that, because everyone have to start measuring. Do you see that kind of a future coming up, where your supply company will go, right, I'm going to use chili, but you've got your insurance. Have you got your carbon reporting before we do business with you?
Yes, I can see that being the case for sure. And I hope that when everybody ticks that box, it's all done with a great set of intentions, rather than, oh, it's just a box ticking exercise. If it's got that, I tick a box, this is legislative, but this is why we're doing it, and this is important to us, then the benefit kind of collectively will be so much greater. But yeah, I do see that as being a point of entry for many contractual arrangements that we'll face in the short term as much as the medium term.
I mean, it's early days of the standard, James, but obviously it's great that you guys are promoting it, and great that Pete's sort of signed up to it. But that is kind of where we see the future. Do you believe that it will start to become part of business? The idea of what your carbon is going to be part of the same as your P&L, and same as kind of what your customers say. You're going to have to say, right, here's where I am and what I'm doing to reduce my impact.
I absolutely do. I was on a webinar last week with a number of the Northern Council sustainability leads, who all talked about the fact that the way that they procure contracts is changing, and will continue to change, and will be the same across the whole of the country. And I think gone are the days of just what is the lowest price. It is now about potentially, some of those larger contracts being broken up so more local companies can engage. And also within that, proposals will absolutely need to factor in what that company is doing in the local area from an environmental, a sustainability perspective, and being able to provide a dashboard view of their carbon footprint and what their plans are over the short and long term to make an impact on their environment will be an absolute integral part to both large and smaller scale tendering as we move forward.
James, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for supporting us, obviously. And Pete, good luck with your business, and hopefully the standard will help you in progressing as well. Thanks for your time today, gents.
Thanks so much.